Welcome back, everybody, to Retroactive, your place for all things fandom. My name's Andrew. Today, we're going to be talking a few different things. Obviously, we're going to be talking Ahsoka like we always do. We're going to be talking A Haunting in Venice, Aquaman 2 trailer, bunch of other stuff. But first, let me introduce my other panelists today. We have Brandon Jenkins joining us again. What's up, man?
Hello. How is everybody doing tonight? I am doing well.
And then, of course, I have my wife joining us back again. What's up? How you doing,
guys?
Ashlyn?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Well, you know how I'm doing because I live with you. So
Yes, true.
I don't know how you're doing. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Yeah, but pretty good week. Obviously, you and all three of us actually all went to some cons this weekend. We went to Ocala Comic-Con on Sunday and got some cool signatures. We'll be showing you guys some stuff later on. I know, Brandon, you were very busy with two different cons as you did Ocala and 90s Con.
I'm still recovering. I haven't had a good night's sleep all week.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead. We're going to jump into our first topic of the day. And for that, we are going to do the Aquaman 2 trailer. Now, this one, obviously, as we know, DC in general has been going through a lot of stuff lately with the movies and the future of the DCU, all that kind of stuff. But we finally, years later, get a Aquaman 2 trailer to come out. I'm going to say that as far as my thoughts on the trailer, it was a lot to take in. There's a lot there. It's not that they're showing us a lot in the sense of like the story per se. It's more just visually a lot. I need to go back and rewatch the first Aquaman because honestly, I think I've seen it twice, and it's been a really long time. I do remember enjoying it. You know, Jason Momoa is one of those. Is like just a fun actor to watch type of thing. I'm a little concerned because of obviously with this style of movie, it is just all like basically 100% CGI. So it can really go one way or the other when you're talking that. Like it's either gonna be like a hot mess or you have the potential to have more of an Avatar situation, but normally they don't put in the funding and time to do that. And then story wise, it seems like this is be kind of like a buddy cop thing, if you will, with him and his brother teaming back up, you know, that sort of thing. They're clearly avoiding talking about Mira like at all, which is the right choice. And a few other things. But let me jump it over to Brandon. What were your thoughts with this trailer?
DC, I feel like, does a very good job with their trailers and does terrible execution on their movies.
That's a good point. I mean, honestly,
I hate to be that brutal about it, but yeah, I was really hyped for the second Shazam. I was really hyped for Black Adam, and both left me very disappointed. There were some tiny good takeaways from both, but not enough to really make me want to pay money for it unless you just count it part of my HBO subscription. I wouldn't, and Flash, good Lord.
Yeah.
I was like, are you purposely avoiding talking about Flash?
That one was like, I have no words to describe how much of I want to get back that 2 hours of my life. I really don't. I hate it.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you on that.
The first Aquaman, though, I really did think it was a turning point for the DC, at least at the time, because they were coming out with all those movies for the Snyderverse. You know, it was the solo movies that were kind of popping up, and we hadn't seen Aquaman on the big screen, and I thought they did an okay job. I'm not gonna say great, but I thought it was an okay job. I really do like the Black Manta character. And I feel like it's something that they can expand a little bit more on, but I don't know how much they could do it to stretch out another movie with the same main villain.
Right.
That to me is my biggest reservation with this movie is like they couldn't bring in anybody else as a main villain.
Yeah.
They could have, it may just be that they're cycling a little bit because they don't know what to do. But I don't know. I don't have any expectations with this, as I have been proven with DC not to. But I hope for the best with it.
Ashlyn, how about you?
It looks interesting. I'm curious to see how it goes. Going in with basically rock bottom expectations at this point because of
DC,
Flash.
expect the less.
That's right, man. Yes, you got it.
I am like with all the waffling with the Amber Heard situation. I'm just like, I'm still pissed that she's in it. I'm glad that they cut out as much of her story as possible, but she's in the trailer.
Minus the baby, because like what?
I'm
barely in the trailer. I missed her
like 0.2 seconds, but I'm just like, wait, they had a kid? Like what?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and that's the opening part of the trailer is he's like, I'm a dad now. And when we left off, he was in the bottom of the ocean battling off in a big fight scene with the trench people. So like, where did this child come from? Like this whole, so I don't know if we're going to go do some back work and like be like, okay, so this is what you missed the last like 2 years, however old this baby is right now.
Could also be something that ties into that. This is just throwing this out there, but it could possibly be something that was affected because of all the Flash stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know that to be true because originally this movie was supposed to come out first. But then with all the reworks and like the reshooting and everything else that's had to happen with this movie, they had to push it again and again and again, even more so than all the pandemic stuff. So I don't know if that's going to really play into it at all. We did see Flash show up at the we did see Aquaman show up at the very end of the Flash to say like he is Aquaman. Like he was like everywhere. Every time I went to a one, he was like, you were the Aquaman that showed up, except for the one with Batman where there weren't any like other superhumans. But so that was an interesting point to be like, he was always like essentially the same Aquaman, whereas Batman changed every single time. So I don't know. There's just so much like to be like, I'm not sure what to think because of X, Y, or Z. There's just so many reasons why we have no idea where this is going or if it's even leading anywhere. But Brandon, sorry, I'm so used to saying Josh.
Okay.
Josh couldn't join us tonight, but that was a really good point about the Manta thing I didn't think about. We're essentially more or less doing a rehash of the first movie with the same villain, and like whereas like the brother was like the second villain, he's more of like a team up type of thing. So it's kind of like a starting into more of like a Loki Thor type of relationship, I would say. Which is fine. Like, I do want to bring this up because we're talking about Jason Momoa. So I made Ashlyn watch Fast X the other night because it's on Peacock now.
Oh my god, it was.
Have you seen that movie?
So bad.
Absolutely. That's one franchise I will never even remotely try to get into. I've seen like Tokyo Drift and stuff when it's free on
Tokyo
TV,
Drift's a good movie, honestly.
10 years ago, whenever it was, but no.
You're not missing anything. I will say this. I'll say this for the Fast franchise. You could skip everything else, but we just rewatched Hobbs and Shaw last night.
And that's really good.
And that's a really good one. That is a buddy cop movie with two characters and two actors that like work well together. And like it's some ridiculous stuff in there, but it fits within the world that they create for that.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's an expansion of the Fast franchise, but it's just so much better than the last like 3 movies they've made. But I made her watch Fast X because I just wanted to see her reaction. Because Jason Momoa is the bad guy in the latest movie. He plays the villain, and he is the most ridiculous villain you have ever seen, especially when it comes to the Fast and Furious movies. He's almost in a completely different movie. But at the same time, I can't stop watching him. He's just so fucking entertaining. Like,
it gets like so ridiculous. And like Andrew's like, think of it as like he is Dom's Joker. And once he said that to me, it made sense because of the theatrics and like just the straight up ridiculousness. I think his character, they say, is like sociopathic and like has major trauma and like issues, which is why he acts like completely obscene. There's like a whole like Weekend at Bernie's scene that plays out, and it's
where he's like killed a couple of his henchmen, but he's got them like with their eyes taped open and shit, and he's talking with them and stuff like
having
that.
a full tea party. Like it's fucking out
if
there.
you
Just
what
like...
I would say is see if on YouTube, if someone like cuts together his scenes or something like that, a couple of them, just go on there and try and watch some of those just to entertain yourself a little bit.
No, you're not selling me.
No, I'm not trying to sell the movie. I'm not. I will say this: anyone who hasn't seen Fast X, but maybe has seen some of the other movies, or like is a fan of the franchise and still hasn't seen it because they have reservations, it's not going to live up to anything. But if you're a fan of Jason Momoa, it might be worth at least watching it because of him, because he is having so much fun in this movie. And I feel like part of me thinks like Vin Diesel must have hated it the whole time because
because he's the only one that takes these movies seriously anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, you can tell everyone else is just like checked out,
phoning it in,
phoning it in type of thing.
So bad. Like the opening scene comes up and the font comes up, and I just look at him and I'm like, the hell is this? And then it just keeps playing out the opening scene, and I'm like, what is this B-real garbage that we're watching right now? Because this looks like worse than like the
and some
quality
of
of the film of the original. Like
some of the graphics were not good. They were very like video game-esque scenes with some of the cars and things like that.
Yeah.
So not good. But yeah, like all that to say, Jason Momoa was just so funny to watch. He's like super flamboyant and ridiculous, and just he's having the time of his life. So watch it for that, if nothing else. But other than that, no, you can just honestly skip from scene to scene. So with that, we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic. We're going to be talking about the Lando series. Well, was a series, is now about to be transitioned into a film instead. This is from a report from like Talk at Lucasfilm and things like that. Obviously, there's been some big restructures that Disney's been going through with a lot of their different properties. Whoop, we lost somebody.
Hi.
Hold on a second.
There you
go. There you are. Did your light go out?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So anyway, there's been a lot of restructure with Disney and their property, especially with the Marvel and Star Wars end of things. Any of their IPs, things are getting scrapped. Things are being like restructured. This is one of those things that I'm glad didn't get scrapped. I'm not sure if I prefer it as a movie over a series, because I honestly don't know where they're taking the story with this. But I will say this. Getting Donald Glover back as young Lando, 100% behind it. Like, that is a huge selling point for me because I thought he was amazing as young Lando in Solo. Solo's, I think, a very underrated Star Wars movie. I think it gets a lot of hate just because they had to do a recast for Harrison Ford because obviously.
Yeah. Just have 90-year-old
Harrison
Ford.
They just did it.
It'll be fine.
They just did that with Indiana Jones. So, like, I mean, but we were not even close to that when Solo was coming around. Like, they were doing de-aging, but it was not at that point a few years ago to be able to do an entire film. So, Ashlyn, what are your thoughts on this as far as the whole like going from series to movie? Do you have any like projections on where they might take this, anything like that?
I was a little disappointed when they said they were taking it to a movie, just because we're going to get that less time, to do the full story. And I would totally want more time with Donald Glover. He was absolutely amazing, like Billy D. Williams and reincarnated. So it was really great to have. I don't think anybody else could pull this off. So the fact that they're like not trying to recast him and they're like, no, we're sticking with Donald Glover. We're going to bring him back. I'm excited about that. I'm fingers crossed, hope that the movie does better than Solo did and that they don't keep seeing this trend of people unfortunately hating on these characters and then being like, oh no, now we got to pull the plug on this or that or whatever. Like, I want it to be a positive response so that we don't lose more things. Because after Solo, we lost so many potential on things because they were like, oh no, it's not going to do well and we're going to lose our money. So
that's when we switched from movies to series instead, was because of Solo. Like, Boba Fett was supposed to be a movie, and that one probably could have been a movie, in my opinion. And and I think they probably had a little bit of a different story at that point when it was set to be a movie than what we got. That one could have worked as a movie, but the problem is, and this is where I'm a little concerned about the whole movie structure thing is we're seeing a downtick in people going to the theaters. Like even after like there was that influx post pandemic when people were like, yeah, I want to go back to the movies again. And now people are, because of the financial side of things, people are having to be a little bit more reserved with what they choose to go see. So even some of these bigger blockbusters, like different Marvel movies and IPs that should be making bank, DC or anything like that, whether it is a word of mouth situation, whether they hear it's bad, or it's not catching their attention, or something that is like wide appeal, it's not making bank like it should. Even some movies that are really good are just not making the money that they should. And I'm a little worried with this right here. So to your point, if this bombs or just doesn't do well, what does that mean for things going forward? But again, they're restructuring again because they're also not necessarily hitting the marks that they want to be hitting with their series in some cases, or what they think they should be hitting, which I don't even know how that works as far as, the whole streaming side of things.
Yeah, they don't have a template to go off of. So,
right.
It's,
so Brandon, what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Couple points. I'm the odd one out here. I didn't really care for Solo.
That's fine. You're in the majority on that one. So
am I? I don't know what people think about that movie. I really don't. It didn't grab me like Rogue One did. And I kind of went into it expecting something along those lines.
Okay.
I didn't really care for his casting. I did for Donald Glover. I thought he was a great Lando. So I agree with Ashlyn on that one for sure. But with regard to that movie as a whole, I also see where you guys are coming from, that it did set up more stuff that we haven't seen. So that's my real hope for that this Lando movie can kind of continue a little bit on that, and it would act more as a Solo sequel, as it than just a fresh shot of Lando and how Lando's origins came. Sure, it'd be cool to see it. But also I kind of hope it continues a little bit more on that side of Star Wars that we haven't seen yet. Maybe some Darth Maul.
Yes, thank you. See, that's my point. That's my point right there. Is I'm a little concerned that this is it's clear it's his movie. Okay, fine. Yeah, that's fine. But I'm a little concerned that it's just going to be so narrow on that and be a completely fresh story. It's not going to be too much of a continuation. We'll probably at best, and I hope I'm wrong on this, get a cameo of like young Han Solo or something like that showing up, type of thing.
Awesome. It'd be awesome to see a Lando Maul fight where he has to fight just with his blaster and his wit, and Maul being old Maul, he's kind of run down a little bit. I'm just kind of visualizing all this, and like those two going head to head, fresh young Lando versus old decrepit Maul, and like I feel like that'd be cool to bring to if they did it right, that would be cool. But I don't want to get my hopes up on this because I feel like Disney with their shows, it's hit or miss. And we talked about this the last time I was on with Marvel, and it's like, there's a lot that they're trying to push out, but I feel like that there's not a lot of time that they're taking to really analyze and really make sure that it's something special. And with Lando, you have such a good character to go off of. I hope that they do it right, and I hope they take their time with it to make it right. So
I agree. Yeah, it's one of those things that, like, one of my concerns with the whole like movie versus the series is I was kind of hoping with that going to series that it was going to lead then into possible other series, whether we get like, if that one was very Lando centered, maybe it would then spin off into maybe like a Han and Chewie series.
Oh man!
And then we could do like a Crimson Dawn.
I knew you were going to bring this up because I was thinking about it the whole time when you brought up Maul. That's like his favorite scene at the end of Solo is the Kira story and the Crimson Dawn story.
Dude, Kira is such an underrated character for Star Wars that I think and they have expanded on her in the comics, and there's some books and stuff like that, but that's all they've done. as we've seen. But so there's clearly like people, whether even if it's in the more like creative side of Lucasfilm, that want to tell a story with this character. They've even brought her into like the original trilogy era, or like just post that, like teaming up with like Leia and Han again and stuff like that down the line. But I want to see what happens next for her, being essentially in charge, if you will, of Crimson Dawn with Maul like by his side. That seems like such a cool dynamic that needs to be addressed, and that, in my opinion, has to be a series. It needs that needs time to be fleshed out, even if it's only 8 episodes. We need a good like 8 45 to an hour episodes of something like that and tell that story, because there's a lot of gap between that period and then when he shows up in Rebels.
Yeah.
And I want to understand his fall because of the Empire, his loss of power of Crimson Dawn and all that kind of stuff. And like I said, their dynamic, I just think that would be such a cool story. So like I said, I'm a little worried that we're not going to get that because we're switching this into the movie sphere. Probably best case scenario as far as that is this movie, if it does well, would hopefully maybe, if nothing else, create a like Solo 2 movie or something like that, because there's been quite a bit of push. Like that movie, I know you said you're not a big fan of it, and I joke that you're in the majority, that most people don't like it, but that's because, in my opinion, most people didn't give it a shot, and they were just so. I'm not saying that's you. I'm just saying generally speaking. That's why it didn't do well at the box office. People just didn't go see it.
Yeah.
So Andrew, to your point, with them hopefully doing a series, like obviously Maul is a little bit more flexible of a character, but now that Emilia Clarke played Gaia, do you think that they would still bring her back as Kira?
If nothing else, that would actually solidify her in Disney even more, because now she's not only, she doesn't just have this one thing under her belt from Disney. Now she has 2. And they cross like these barriers all the time between Marvel, Star Wars, and people going from Marvel to DC and that are completely separate studios. So I don't think that's a problem. I think that's actually a good thing. I think, like I said, it solidifies her relationship. As long as she felt like she had a decent experience on that set and working with Disney, I would feel like she'd be open to returning. This is purely speculation, clearly.
Obviously.
But from all the interviews, obviously we all have a lot, thoughts about the whole Secret Invasion thing and how it could have been better and the ending was not great. But all the interviews that she did, it seemed like she had a really great time doing it. Whatever they were doing, she seemed like she had a great time. She was always laughing and joking and stuff like that in all the interviews I saw. So it seemed like she had a decent time, actually doing that series. So I would hope that it would carry over into something like this. So I think the more things that she does within the Disney studios, if you will hopefully, warrant like a better relationship and a continuation of something else. But I don't know. It's all a big what if. The thing with this that I wanted to mention with Lando specifically was originally when they were talking about the Lando series, I think the original idea was it was actually going to be like a two-part series of like 2 separate timelines. There was going to be young Lando and old Lando showing up in the series was the original concept. And there was going to be like 2 storylines going on at the same time. Because I think they said that the older Lando story was going to be about, at the very end of The Rise of Skywalker, when he meets that young black girl that they found with the space horses and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
She talks about, I don't know who my family is. And he's like, well, you want to come with me and we'll see, what we can find out. Something like that. Like, he's like, come with me and we'll go do something. It was going to be something along those lines was the theory, and some of the story points that were getting leaked at that time was it was going to be about those 2 kind of going off and, finding more about like where she comes from and things like that.
You said that was a leak?
That was like a leak of the initial story points for the Lando series for his side of the story.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
And then there was going to be a completely separate story going on for young Lando. And there's probably something that would tie it into, both, that is like what's happening here pertains to what happens in the future, I would assume. But
that would be
I
cool
thought
if they could do that. in the movie still. I feel like that would be a really strong storyline.
And they
to
still
have
could
them
do it.
Going back
They
and
still
forth.
could do it. The problem is now we're on a time restraint.
Yeah.
Like now we're having to do this in 2 hours, essentially. You know what I mean? Like maybe just over 2 hours, as opposed to six or so hours of a series type of thing. So I don't know if that's the route they're going to go. And also, obviously, Billy D. Williams is up there in age. So by the time now that they're getting around to it now, which is several years later than they initially planned, because this Lando series, I think, was originally talked about in like 2019.
I was going to say, I think 2019.
And then everything happened and everything got pushed back years. So we're talking a good, 4 years after this was initially a concept, if not more. And so, things are a little bit different on the landscape. So it might just be a young Lando movie at this point. I don't know, but I'd love to, if nothing else, if we get like I joked about a whole solo cameo, it'd be nice to get an older Lando cameo. It could be like I've heard this reference before, but I'm not an Indiana Jones fan or anything like that, but there was a Indiana Jones series back in the day, like the Adventures of Young Jones. Yes. So the opening is like old Indiana Jones, like kind of like telling the story. He's like, let's say he's like reading a book and be like, let me tell you the time when it was this, like have something like that where it's like where he just shows up at the beginning and then like the end of the movie. He's like, let me tell you about the time when I, did this really suave thing,
It's very cliche to do that though. I mean,
it is.
So many movies do that.
But
if we video games too.
Yeah, if we don't get a way to have him in the actual movie for story point, it'd be a nice little nod.
I like the idea of what you said, where you that the leak you mentioned, where it kind of goes back and forth between the two separate stories. I like that. That's stuff that I think fits in and ties in without forcing it.
Right.
Just
and Star Wars hasn't
end.
done that, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
They haven't really done a dual timeline type of story, and that would be something very different because they've been branching out with whether it be the series or the movies, doing things that they've never done before. Like, I think it was something with Rise of Skywalker, and I know there's a lot of like, about Rise of Skywalker, and I know you in particular, but there was something that they did with that. Or it might not have been Rise of Skywalker. It was something during the sequel trilogy that they had done that Star Wars had never done before, but like in an interesting way. It was something like filmmaking, whether it was like I know it's not like a montage or it was like a time jump or a flashback or something like that. There was something that Star Wars, like at that point in time, had not done prior. And I just, for the life of me, can't remember what it was. And it sounds like such a simple thing because it is. But apparently they just had never done that before at that point in time. So ever since then, I feel like they've been feeling the restraints, if you will, lifting off them a little bit and being like, okay, now we want to do this type of story. Oh, now we want to do this. I mean, we're going to get into this later, but just look at the Ahsoka series. They're getting very mystical and deep into the Star Wars lore and like very... obviously magic because of, the Night Sisters, but it's way bigger than that. And they haven't really done that before. So it's not necessarily Marvel where we're getting different types of movies like the spy thriller and the space opera and things like that, because it's still Star Wars, but we're starting to get some of these outside themes and concepts and story points, like of how to tell a story, being put into the Star Wars universe that we've never gotten before. So hopefully we get something like that. Again, that was something from a while back that I don't know is ever going to come to fruition, but I think that would, in my opinion, be the most ideal way to tell the story, in my opinion. And you would cater to the old school and the new school Star Wars fans all at the same time. You guarantee more money at the box office that way. Yeah. So...
Dave Filoni, you've been called out. This is
for real.
Make it happen, sir. You have been warned. And we've been talking a little bit about Disney. We're going to be talking in just a second about their expansion. But before that, we're actually going to jump over one quick thing. I want to talk about... Ashley and I got to go see the new movie, A Haunting in Venice, which is a continuation of the story of Hercule Poirot, I believe is how you say it. The mustachiory detective from Finland. This is a new style of story. This is very like horror based. Something very different for the murder mystery series, everything like that. And I want to go ahead now. Brandon, have you seen this movie at all?
I have not.
Okay, so I'm going to jump it over to Ashlyn then. Ashlyn, I know you're a fan of these movies because we own them. What did you think of this new addition to the series?
Real quick, I'll let y'all talk about this. I'll be right back.
Sounds good.
No worries. For me, it was very different, and I knew it was going to be different coming into it from the trailers. I was like, whoa, this is like very different than anything we've had. Everything's been very much thriller up until this point, typical murder mystery. And so, but it feels like they're upping the stakes each time. You know, Murder on the Orient Express was very much a very contained story because you're on this train. Like there's nothing.
It's always a
nowhere
contained
to go.
story, but just in a different area. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but then we got to Death on the Nile, and it's multiple locations, and there's this whole like through line story, and then typical Agatha Christie, everyone's connected, but it just felt like the stakes were higher in that one. Maybe because of Gal Gadot's character being like a celebrity, you know. I mean, there were kind of celebrity characters with Murder on the Orient, but still, it felt more menacing, I guess, because of the fact that it wasn't just like one person died, now we're trying to find them. Now this is like they were active murders. And then the same thing with A Haunting in Venice. Now we've got this very dark story, like dark story. There's not too much, you know, kind of like that happiness. Like I remember thinking back to like Death on the Nile, where you had some of the distractions and the happy stuff going on, you know, because there's a wedding and like, so you had that more relief. This was just like in your face, like high tension, high stakes, very horror-esque all the time. Like I was on the edge of my seat the entire film. Like it was just way more heart pounding, like just what's going to come next. I don't really see what's coming for me. Like, so it was really, really good. Just very dark, very different than anything we had Hercule go through before. But I also really liked some of those character developments for Hercule's character, because at this point he's coming out of retirement to do this but not do this. He's kind of being dragged
every time I think I'm out, they pull me back in, you know. That's
Tina Fey's just like, no, you're doing this. Like,
she was something else in this. I liked her character.
Quite funny. I liked her character a lot. And then, of course, Jamie Dornan's character was really good. The emotionality with him and his struggles. And then I don't know the actress's name. I don't watch this show, but I know her from, of course, your family watching Yellowstone. But the lead actress, I thought her performance was really good.
You know what I realized that she's also in? Sherlock Holmes.
Oh, you're right.
With Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that.
Yep.
She's Watson's wife.
Yep.
And then, of course, oh my God, I'm going to kick myself for not knowing her name right now, but the actress that plays the medium.
Yes.
She was fantastic. Michelle Yeoh, right?
Yes.
Gotcha. See, it just tamed me. Slid right back.
You got it.
So she did a great job. I thought all the characters were really interesting. The whole haunted house theme was very interesting. I'm a sucker for anything in Venice. I'm obsessed with Italy. So Venice and the whole setting, everything about it, I really don't have really anything negative to say about it. It was really well done. Like I said, you didn't really see any obvious angles coming, except for a couple of things here and there with some classic, like, murder.
Well, it's a trope of the genre, if you will.
Yeah, the tropes, yeah. But other than that, like, it was really fantastic. Do I think it has the same rewatchability as the first two? Just because of the horror genre of it and me not being a big horror person, that it's not like it's going to be one that's on like rewatch for me, but I still really appreciate it, and it definitely when I'm on a Agatha Christie binge, we'll definitely watch all three together.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you on that. See, the problem I had with the second one, Death on the Nile, and this has nothing to do with the movie. Thought the movie was really good. It's hard for me to go back and watch that movie because
Armie Hammer.
Armie Hammer, yeah, being in it, and he's so prominent in that film, like all the way through to the end, that it's just so distracting for me. And that's more of a personal note. Again, that has nothing to do with the film. It's just unfortunate for them that that movie was filmed and then everything came out about Armie Hammer. It's kind of like if going back and like watching it, like things with like Kevin Spacey and things like that. You know what I mean? Only difference is Kevin Spacey was a much better actor. but anyway,
and he didn't want to, barbecue women's ribs and stuff.
Right. Yeah, just other terrible things. People are terrible. Anyway, and that's like the theme of these movies is, people are inherently evil. And so I've really enjoyed these movies. I like these. It, very much in the same vein as like the Knives Out, which is like an homage to the Agatha Christie novels as well, and things like that. The whole whodunit, but like new and interesting ways. And from what I heard, so this one is based off of a Halloween Party, I think is the name of the book, but they took it in a completely different direction. It wasn't set in Italy, apparently, in the original novel, and obviously I'm sure they took some other liberties with it, making it a little bit more horror based with the whole Halloween theme. I don't know. I haven't read the books specifically, but even though they changed all those things, a lot of people that are diehards of this said that they did it in a really good way, which is good to hear. Because a lot of times that's not the case, So I think that Kevin Branagh, the fact that he's not only starred in all three of these, but directed all three of these movies, that's an impressive feat in and of itself to have to direct, always an ensemble cast every single time. Do these different locations and scenes and like also pay homage to what came before and like be respectful of the source material and things like that. So that's a lot of, balls to keep in the air type of thing. And so hats off to him for that. These are really good movies. I don't know where I'd place this. I think Murder on the Orient is still probably my favorite out of the three. I'll have to see this one again to decide if it's my second or third favorite. Again, the whole Death on the Nile thing has a whole separate thing that I just can't get past in some cases. So like I try and separate it as best I can. The horror element with this one was very interesting. It was very different than what we've seen before. I liked the dynamic between him and Amy Poehler. That's not the name.
Tina Fey.
Tina Fey. Sorry, Amy Poehler's like her best friend. Tina Fey.
I was like, she was in that movie.
If Amy Poehler showed up too, that movie would have completely flipped genres. Like then it's 100% comedy. I was actually shocked how, with the fact that we took the tonal shift into horror with this one, that they still had as much humor as they did. And of course, it's not like too much. It's just more like smart humor and like wittiness and his typical.
A lot of the banter between.
It's the banter between the two.
And Hercule, like
that definitely was the case. I was just kind of shocked that it was still there. I was happy though, like because that's one of the best parts is the way that he talks and the wittiness that he has and his turn of phrase and things like that. You don't want to lose that. I just was interested to see when I saw the trailer, which. This came out of nowhere when the trailer dropped. I had no idea that this movie was happening.
Nothing had been said, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're doing a third movie. You should come see it.
This is one of those, unfortunately, I don't think it's going to do super well at the box office. I think I heard that because it came out the same time as The Nun 2 came out this weekend, and apparently The Nun 2 beat that out. But that's because that's like
part of the Conjuring universe.
It's part of the Conjuring universe. It's like this is its own universe, but the Conjuring universe always pulls people. Doesn't matter if it's a good or bad movie. The universe itself, the horror fans flock to that stuff pretty much every time. So that was probably not the best idea on their front. They probably should have waited maybe an extra week or two to go closer to October or something like that. But for all I know, October is full up too. So unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to do super well. So I don't know if we're going to get more. But I was honestly shocked this one happened because the last one didn't do very well either, because that came out during the whole pandemic era. And so we'll just have to wait and see. We might still get more. There's plenty of books to base these movies off of, and I'll watch.
Maybe it'll
Kevin
get
Branagh.
more legs, as
it's
it
possible,
stays in. So.
Especially because it is the Halloween season. People are going to be seeking out anything that's like spooky related over the next month or so. So hopefully it has legs or something like that, and we'll see what happens with that. Like I said, I'll go see Kevin Branagh play this ridiculous character every single time. He's just so funny. And but yeah, so it was good. And Brandon, I would highly recommend seeing. Have you seen any of the ones? No. Okay.
Okay, you have homework.
You have
now,
to see.
Brandon.
You have to see the
fair
first
enough.
two.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. They're really good. Like, did you see Knives Out?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did.
So yeah, Knives Out is essentially like an homage to these. Well, they were books first. These books, as well as like Clue and things like that. Like anything whodunit, it's an homage to that. Obviously, it's its own fresh take, but they all kind of like coincide with each other. And the character that oh man, what's the lead guy's name? 007.
Hold on.
Daniel Craig.
Thank you. The character that he plays is, in my opinion, kind of like a different version of Hercule Poirot type of thing. He's like the modern. I'll never say
Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Yeah, it's like a modern day like Southern version of this character, because they kind of have similar like that same like very wit to them type of thing, and so
similar mannerisms,
things like that. They're always on the outskirts of like the society type of thing, and like I said, I love those Knives Out movies. Those are great. So if you like those, I would definitely recommend checking out these as well. All right. So now, as I mentioned, we've talked about it a little bit. There is some Disney park news. Normally we don't get into this kind of stuff, but this is a little bit too big not to talk about. Now, let me go ahead and preface this by saying my wife and I both work for Disney, but we do not represent the company, or I forget the terminology, but I do not represent Disney parks. I'm just going to say that right now. I want to cover my ass as much as possible. So we do not speak for the company or the brand. That's the phrase I was looking for.
Phrase.
Thank you. Okay. So Disney Parks announced this week that they are doing a $60 billion expansion to all Disney parks around the world over the next 10 years. It's a huge expansion plan. They spoke that there is so much land for development. Most of it, as my wife and I know, is here at Disney World, but there is still probably land at a lot of the other ones, possibly in other countries. Disneyland itself is kind of tight-knit because of where it's built. But there is land to be expanded on. They did mention that it's like 1,600 or something like that acres that is still left for development, and that is equivalent of like 20 Disneylands or something like that. Whatever it was, it's probably like 16,000, not 1,600. That doesn't sound big enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a lot of park. That's a lot
of park.
That's a lot of park. That's a lot of expanding. I'm going to jump it over to the one guy that maybe doesn't feel like he was a little blindsided by some of this stuff. I threw it to him last minute, but I'm going to jump it over to Brandon. What are your thoughts on this? Do you have any like projections on what you think they might do or anything like that?
So first question, is this strictly for Disney World?
No, this is
all
every
Disney parks. Okay,
yeah, across the entire world.
My original thought process was, okay, if it's Disney World, then they're going to follow suit with California and go straight into Marvel World, and do like a Marvel-based thing, which I believe Disney World at least should. Let
me go ahead and address that for you real quick.
Okay,
I do apologize for cutting off.
Fine, go for it.
As of now, Disney can't. There is another one. My wife and I also work for Universal. We do not speak for the company or the brand. All right. I'm gonna have to start doing that.
You work for both,
video.
huh?
We work
playing both sides. All right,
that's right. That's right. We'll see how things land.
Yeah.
So Universal has Marvel Land. In case people don't know, Islands of Adventure has Marvel Land. There was a deal struck, 20 odd years ago, back before that was deal. It's a 50-year deal that they signed because this is back in the 90s.
What year are they on now?
I think the deal was set. I think the deal was set in the 90s, probably the late 90s.
Or it might be longer than 50 years, Andrew, because I think the deal ends in 2050. Is the year it ends.
I don't know the specific longevity of the contract, but this is what I'll say about this. So back in the 90s, Marvel almost went bankrupt completely.
Yeah.
So at that point, they sold off a bunch of their properties and licensing. That's how all these different studios got different things. So you had like Blade coming out with one, X-Men coming out with another, things like that. That's how that happened. Oh, and Sony getting Spider-Man, of course.
Yeah.
So that's how that happened. Along with that, they were signing off other things like this. They signed off theme park rights, and Universal bought them. Now, I don't know if I'll say this, Ashlyn, I don't know if it's a 50-year contract or a perpetuity thing.
I know it has an end date as far as the theme park contract.
Okay.
The end date, I believe, is 2050. So they still have quite a few more years left of
basically
owning the theme
what
park
that
rights.
means is Universal owns the rights to Marvel themed rides, more or less, this side of the Mississippi.
Okay.
That's why they can build it in California, but they can't build it here. Now, Guardians is the one exception because there are a few properties within that that contract that don't touch that.
Yeah.
So it's like, because Marvel is such a massive thing, there's some things that kind of fall through the cracks and like might have, for all I know, have maybe like multiple licensing type things, because I don't remember who created Guardians of the Galaxy, but let's say it's like a Jack Kirby situation versus a Stan Lee situation. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like maybe they have the rights to the Stan Lee characters, but not the specifically Jack Kirby characters. Again, don't know the specifics on that, but that's basically the gist of it. Is they own the rights this side of the Mississippi. Disney cannot build traditional Marvel stuff or like their MCU based Marvel characters as of now in their parks at Disney World, which sucks. It's absolutely terrible. They can only do it in California and overseas, everywhere but here. So I apologize, I interjected, but I just wanted to address that for you right there. So
that's
take that
valuable,
off the table.
Valuable knowledge I did not know. So that's interesting. They really screwed themselves back in the 90s. But no, so okay, well then with that said, my only hope is that it would just be more Star Wars. I mean, I want to see, I said this from the get-go before Galaxy's Edge was even a thing, which by the way still have yet to go to.
Are you joking?
I am not joking. I am a Floridian and a terrible one at
We're
that.
going.
We're going. We're going to take
we'll
a field trip.
Okay.
We'll talk about this after the show, but this is happening.
I don't know if Kat has yet. I think she might have. I know.
Well, obviously you're both invited, so.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, have not gone to that. But I will say, with what my hopes were for it was a entire park based off
of
Star Wars.
Yeah.
So like you're starting in like, you walk in and boom, you're in the Naboo Palace. That's the entrance, right? And then you walk outside and it's beautiful. It's floral, lakes and whatever have you, right? And then you walk around the corner, a couple of stretches, blah, 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 and you're in Tatooine. You go, and just, planet after planet after planet, but little sections of those cities, how they would do Coruscant, I don't know, but let's just dream, right?
Endor.
Endor.
And you have to have Endor. Yeah. So like, but that was my hope for it. And that's kind of where my hope is going to stay. And in thinking of this is that it's going to be what I personally, as a Star Wars fan, would like to see. And that, I mean, that's every Star Wars fan's dream, is just to be able to experience the entirety in one place.
Right.
If you're a Disney fan, that is. If you don't like theme parks, well, you can keep dreaming, I guess. That's my idea.
It's a beautiful idea. It's kind of like shocking that they're announcing this, because they are scrapping the Star Cruiser because it was just so out of budget that regular everyday people couldn't afford it. So it's being completely closed down.
I know, right?
Just Brandon, you don't have $5,000 to take you and Kat to go.
I will always be salty. I might work for the company, but I'll always be salty at my own company for that I will never get to see the Star Cruiser. As a Star Wars fan, that kills me. And
There's come on, dude. All you got to do is just transfer your job title. Just go work on it. You'll be
fine. Well, considering it's closing in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. But I mean, hey, I will say to their credit, good on them for realizing that was a terrible idea and not rolling with it and sinking hopefully their money and ideas into something. Hopefully that fans can.
Well, our thing was like, why don't you just lower the freaking price and see how that works? But that's a whole other thing. Ashlyn, your thoughts on the expansion and what you want to see?
I honestly am shocked because we literally just got an announcement not even a month ago saying, hey, Disney Plus is underperforming. We're losing tons and tons. Like it was like what, like 1 million subscribers or some shit. Yeah. So like now we're losing money here. We're losing money there. We can't afford to pay our writers, but our CEO can make crazy amounts of money. But off topic. So they're like, we're destitute. We're not making money. And then now they come out and they're like, so we're going to have like a 2012 with a renaissance of the parks, and we're going to pour $60 billion in over the next 10 years. I was shocked. I mean, I understand that there's a lot of that money, especially internationally with the parks, because we've got 2 parks in China, 2 parks in Japan. You've got Disneyland, Paris. So like we've got parks across in those other countries that get outside funding. They get funding from the companies there. So we're used to them having all the best stuff, i.e. like Hong Kong and Tokyo Disney and things like that. But I'm also like surprised with the whole like world expansion because we just got done expanding in other places. Hong Kong Disneyland just got a huge revamp that they're still getting expansions and stuff on. They've been working in Disneyland Paris for the past couple of years too. So they've been, can't remember who got Arendelle, if it was Hong Kong or if it was Shanghai. I think it was Shanghai. Just got the whole Frozen Land with the expansion there. So like everyone's already been expanding in their own parks and doing some updates and things like that over the past 7 or so years that we've worked for Disney. And I mean, Shanghai is pretty new. So they were just expanding on their existing park with the Frozen Land that just got opened. So it's kind of like, I was shocked about all of that. And I could sit here and dream that they're going to do cool things here. They're not. We have the 4 theme parks, the 2 water parks, the whole shopping district with Disney Springs. We pull more money than most of the other parks, and yet we don't get any of the good characters. We don't get any of the new stuff. People throw a hissy fit online and cry and whine if we change something after 20 damn years. It just, we never seem to get the stuff that we deserve. But California always gets a ton of stuff like constantly. And I understand the difference functionality wise with the 2 parks. Like California is for pass holders and they have to keep their repeat guests entertained. Like I get that. But like we shouldn't have to wait 20 damn years for a new this and a new that, whether it's characters or attractions or anything like that. So I don't know. There's things I'd love to see. The new announcements that they made with the expansion about Zootopia taking over in Animal Kingdom they're getting rid of A Bug's Life with the Tree of Life show, but that's just it. It's just a stage show. I would love, there's a train that leaves Animal Kingdom mainland and goes back to the research centers. And Andrew and I have talked about this for years that we wish they would just change that over and you're riding on the train and then you end up in Zootopia back there because it's literally like a petting zoo with goats and stuff. Like it's nothing like super fancy, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
One of the things that I heard about one of the expansions, and this is one of those things that kind of touches on the Marvel thing, is there's talk of doing a Wakanda expansion somewhere.
Okay.
So here's the thing where it makes sense, and I don't mean to be stereotypical, but where it makes sense is Animal Kingdom. But as far as I'm aware, legally, I'm not sure if they can. Now, if they've worked something out, great. Let's do it. Let's start getting some more Marvel stuff here. Let's put it where it needs to be. in like, and again, don't mean to be stereotypical. I just think like culture wise,
Yeah,
it makes sense.
Makes total sense.
It makes perfect sense, and it fits. Like, and that would be an awesome place to put it.
Fits,
so it
fits more than Pandora World for sure.
I'll say this.
I think they did a great job with Pandora World.
Yeah. No, I understand. When they announced that, I was like, wait, what? Like Avatar, but then you see how they tie it in with the whole like agriculture and the like preservation type stuff. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, and they did a really good job with it.
Yeah.
100%. But yeah, do something like that.
6-hour wait time.
God, yeah. Never. Do something like that, but with Wakanda, awesome. Brandon, I'm with you. Ashley and I have talked about it 1,000 times. They should have built an entire Star Wars park. That's what they should have done. That's the thing is, so Disney World in general has the most room to expand because it has the most land. There's, out of all the land and everything that Disney has on it, they are still at around 50% underdeveloped land that they own. Now, part of that is because some of it is like protected land, and whenever they expand on anything or build anything new, however many acres they take, they have to buy somewhere else. So they'll normally like, purchase protected land at like, a sanctuary or, a national park or something like that.
In Florida, so like they'll buy more land in North Orlando and things like that, where we've got like green.
So it's always one trade like for another. So at least they're good with that. But they still have 50% of their land that is not developed at all, which is crazy to think about. So they have so much room left and so many areas they could build multiple parks, let alone just even one extra park. But Star Wars should have been its own thing. I will say that. If they're not willing to do that even now, Ashley and I have talked about this before. So you won't know this because you haven't been to Galaxy's Edge, but Galaxy's Edge is its own like separated area. Star Tours is still a thing, but it's separated. So you have, when you've been on Star Tours, right?
Years ago, man.
Okay.
I mean, I'm talking like just preference. I did work for Disney before. I was in horticulture. So when I did that, Star Tours was fresh. And there was rumors that there was going to be a Star Wars land and whatever. I can't remember. In Magic Kingdom, the big top area with the tents and stuff.
Okay, the circus back there,
that was being constructed. So this was like
2012.
Yeah, somewhere around.
I was going to say,
because it's part of New Fantasyland.
I was going to say, fresh might not be the word because they built that in the 90s.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like
they revamped it.
They revamped it.
Yeah. I'm just teasing you.
I feel you. I don't know the whole history and all that. I've been out of the loop big time, but I do remember that it was under construction and I couldn't write it. And I was like, well, why did I even work for this company? So,
Star Wars thing.
Yeah, right. But they had just acquired Marvel when I worked there. So all the monorails were the very first Avengers and all that, like the very first Avenger movies decaled and all that. That's the time frame I was working there. So there was rumors of doing a Star Wars land, but it hadn't even been acquired, or maybe it was freshly acquired. I don't remember. It was something like that. But
basically, Star Tours is its own spot. It's like you go past Indiana Jones, the show, then Star Tours, then there's the Muppet area.
Yep.
And then past that, there's a big gate, like a big rock gate, and you walk through that like tunnel to get to Galaxy's Edge. What they need to do is destroy all the Muppet stuff.
Amen.
And it's not like, I liked the Muppets as a kid, and I'm not trying to get rid of the Muppets as a whole in the parks. I just think there's somewhere
to move.
Put them somewhere else. Do something new. That show, that 3D show has been around literally since the 90s. I went to it the first time I went to what was MGM at the time, MGM Studios. It was there, and it's still there to this day. And it's just that. And then the Pizza Rizzo restaurant next door that used to be Pizza Planet for like 2 seconds. Anyway, scrap that whole thing and then just expand upon it. Bridge Star Tours to Galaxy's Edge and fill in that space where the Muppet stuff is. So if you're not willing to build a whole other park or whatever, like you should, at least you could have enough space for at least one more attraction plus a bunch of character meet and greets and stuff like that within that area.
That's where I feel like they need to pull over all the meet and greets from where they are in Animation Courtyard, because Animation Courtyard is a whole nother problem that needs to be done. After we get done with the revamp of Epcot, Hollywood Studios is going to probably be their next one, because that park has been an identity crisis since the day it opened. It just has never fully solidified into like one ideal. So
especially since they got Galaxy's Edge and then the Toy Story area, now it really doesn't know what it wants to be.
Yeah.
It's just all over the place. So like if we moved all the stuff, all the meet and greets out of Animation Courtyard, put those in the back where the Mama Melrose and the Christmas shop and everything in Pizza Rizzo is, put in a new Star Wars attraction, and then you would have it all just be kind of congruent and know that that side is like your Star Wars area. This is where it is. I don't have to jump 3 separate areas to get to Star Wars. I just know I can go over there and it's going to be there. And then, like I said, the Little Mermaid attraction is not coming back. And that's on the front edge of the Animation Courtyard. And then it's just like all the Disney Junior meet and greets. And then you've got all the Star Wars meet and greets in the back where the old animation studio was. So they just need to completely redo that whole side of the park over there. And this would be a perfect way to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, clearly we have a lot of thoughts on what Disney can do with their endless amount of money. And including paying their actors. I'll just say that.
Amen. There we go. There it is.
But we're going to move on to our main topic of the day. And, of course, that would be Ahsoka. Now, we're going to start off with episode 5 because, like, how do you not talk about episode 5? Then we'll move over to this week's episode 6. So, obviously, the big thing was the return of the king, if you will. Anakin Skywalker returning. And I had to use this photo because him in his Clone Wars era armor. Never thought we'd see it in live action, and I'm so happy we did. So, obviously, everybody knows I'm a big Star Wars fan. Brandon's a big Star Wars fan.
Wait, you are? What?
Yeah, shocking. I know. And
Dude,
Ashlyn
never
has
knew.
become a big Star Wars fan. So I'm not really sure who to start with. So I'm going to go blindly. Brandon, what do you do?
Man. All right. So, God dang. I don't even know. I didn't even have words for this episode. It was just perfection. I mean, I don't. I have a friend who has been knocking this series for ever since up to this episode. And you know, I sense a little bit of pride in him. So whenever this was done, I was like so it's terrible show, huh? And he's like, I mean, that episode was okay. It was pretty good. I'm like, yeah, all right. No, that that hit a lot of what I'd have to see if I had to rank it. I'd say probably 9.3-ish out of 10, and I have small reservations.
That's
that I'll
so
talk
specific.
It's because it's like if I give it a 9 out of 9, I feel like if I give it a 9.5, it's like there's still like my reservations on and little nitpicks are more than just a 0.5%.
Okay,
but it's not,
all right.
It's not drastic enough to just destroy a rating.
But it's more just that the episode itself is definitely a 9 or like slightly above. But it's just that there's things that maybe you wish you would have seen or changed different type of thing.
Yeah, that's it. So, I mean, first off, and I'll talk about the good first. They hit. I wasn't expecting Rex. I wasn't expecting the Maldalorians. You know, it was a perfect throwback to Clone Wars, and it gave me, as a viewer and a fan of the Clone Wars for so long, that satisfaction being able to see Anakin in the armor, the general armor, or not? Is it general armor? Yeah. His battle armor, and you know, little things like that. Were pure. Not nostalgia. I don't know.
I mean, it kind of is. It's hit 20 years now. Or not 20, 15.
Yeah,
years.
It's been over 10 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it gave me that throwback I wanted. You know, it was fantastic through and through, being able to see Anakin engage not only as Anakin but Vader as well, and Nightfall Anakin with the red lightsaber. That was, oh man, that was
Yeah.
beautiful, beautifully well done. The small little nitpicking concerns that I had, very tiny, but it would have been awesome if they had it in the budget to have Ewan McGregor just pop up, because we don't know if this is a Force ghost or not.
Yeah.
And just like at the very end, I was just waiting for it, and it never happened. It was just like, especially when he was talking about how, like, everything you are is from me, just like everything from my master was for me and his master from me. I was expecting like Ewan to almost like pop out, hello there, and like, and just like, kind of steal the moment just for a second, and then be like, all right, we got to finish this battle, and just like run, that sort of thing. But
I mean, it would have been cool if nothing else to see him in his armor too.
Yeah, exactly. So, and just kind of tie everything in that moment. That would have been cool. I kind of, the Rex was a big surprise. I wasn't prepared for that, but that was perfect, absolutely perfect seeing him, even for that little snippet. That's all I needed. That's all I needed, just to see that. But then the small little complaints was that, and I get why they did it. I mean, it's kind of a dream sequence, more or less, but you could tell enough that it was the Battle of Mandalore, but barely, because of all of that fog and smoke. I'm just like, let me see more. Let me see some landscape. Let me see some cities. Like, I want to see skyscrapers. It just, I'm talking like minuscule things that it is, but it was just, it was kind of itching at me a little bit. The big
That's why
thing
it was
that
hard
kind
to
of
know what it was when they first landed.
Yeah,
was
exactly.
was Ryloth. Like, you wouldn't know because it was
know.
just sand. So I get it.
Yeah, and I get it's a dream sequence. They got to tie it in, and probably they're in some studio with green screens everywhere, and it probably didn't
around one.
Yeah, it probably didn't fit, in the budget enough to do so, or whatever. You got to have your restrictions somewhere. So, not knocking that. I am gonna knock a little bit. I did not care for young Ahsoka. I don't care for her.
Andrew didn't care.
Actress, yeah. And quite frankly, I didn't really care for her as young Gamora for the little bit of time we saw her. I was just like, you don't really look like Ahsoka. You don't really look like Gamora. It's like, I'm sure she's a great actress, but it didn't make me feel like that was Ahsoka. And somebody pointed out to me she seems a little mean-hearted,
So
and
here's
like,
here's
the character
there
doesn't seem as kind-hearted, even a damaged Ahsoka would be in the Clone Wars, but that's just my nitpicking, like I said.
So someone pointed out that for that in particular is that she, and I'm with you there. I had some issues with young Ahsoka, but she's having to do like two separate things at one time. She's playing young Ahsoka, but she's also playing Rosario Dawson playing young Ahsoka. So she is Rosario Dawson's current age and been through everything, but reliving her past. So she's having to be that hardened Ahsoka and that like less, bubbly and fun and, just the normal Ahsoka we've seen from Clone Wars. She's more the Rosario one playing now in that Clone Wars era. So it's like, I'm with you. I had some issues. I honestly had more issues with just some of the things she looked wise.
I did too. Yeah.
Because I think it's because I have less issue with Rosario playing Ahsoka with the modern day, because I can kind of be like, oh, she's aged up. It's fine. I can kind of like, separate the two. Whereas like, I know Ahsoka from Clone Wars and things like that, like to a T. And like in my head, I picture it. And that's when when I say the word Ahsoka, that's what I think of as Clone Wars Ahsoka. So like the face and the structure and all that kind of stuff is burned in my brain. And if it doesn't match up exactly, and that's just kind of like a me thing. So like, I can't really knock anybody. They're never going to get it perfect in my opinion. So that's just one of the things, but that's one of the things I wanted to point out that someone said to me. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, I guess that makes a little bit more sense, but it doesn't fix everything.
Can I tell you my biggest complaint?
What's that?
I think the biggest mark that they missed. They could have had Ashley do it as young Ahsoka. They could have had her voice her, and they didn't. And I feel like that was a big missed opportunity for them.
Okay, so get an actor to play it, but just have Ashley's voice
over it. Yeah. I mean,
that's interesting.
Gosh, so many characters have done it. I mean, I think of just because it's one of my favorite characters of all time, but Silver Surfer was played by Doug Jones and Fantastic Four, but voiced by Lawrence Fishburne, and it worked fine. It's more of a CGI character, but elements of this kind of is too. And being that when you're doing these sorts of things, or when they go to produce this, right? What you're hearing, the audio isn't on the set. They don't have boom mics going over them.
Right.
They go into a studio afterwards
and re-record it.
their voiceovers, to it. So there's nothing stopping them. They could have done it, and I think that was a big missed opportunity because so many people recognize her voice as Ahsoka, and it's like, why would you not have done that for fan service? That would have been the whole hook, line, and sinker there for everything, man. Yeah, it would have been perfect. And yeah, that's just that's my main thing.
So I'm surprised that Ashley's not more upset about kind of being cut out of a character that she essentially built and got to the height that it is. I'm sure she's probably dealt with a lot of emotions personally behind closed doors, kind of on her own. So I definitely feel for her that way, because I feel like somewhere, somehow, like Brandon was saying, like whether it was just having her be the voiceover for young Ahsoka or something to bring her into the live action stuff. Like we all have talked about kind of like how we understand she couldn't have played live action Ahsoka. And so like, we get that, but like having her be still a part of it somehow, because that is who everyone recognizes as Ahsoka and everything like that. And just like paying her that little bit of respect that I think she deserves with this, because we wouldn't be here without her.
Yeah. I'm with you on that.
I have another point to kind of go off of that too, that would tie in it very well. Okay. So, and this is pre Rosario Dawson ever being considered, or maybe it was considered and blah, blah, blah. I don't know, but it was pre Rosario by a couple years. But they, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, who voices Ahsoka? It's Ashley Eckstein. So, my thinking behind that is, if you're talking Revenge of the Sith, maybe there's something in some novels, you can correct me on if I'm wrong here, that I don't know about. But as far as I know, when you look at Anakin, right? In his fall to the dark side, and then, coming back to the light, he wasn't, when he died, he wasn't a Force ghost of his older self, because of them remaking and all that, and in the 90s for the original trilogy, but I'm sorry, not 90s, early or late 2000s, them redoing the original trilogy, and adding Hayden in there, but they reworked it to say that, okay, well, this is where he was as a Jedi, and this was the age, so this is the age you see him as a Force ghost. In that kind of respect, if she walked away from the Order, this is just my own thinking, there's nothing to prove it, but if she had walked away from the Order and decided not to be a Jedi anymore, and then, you hear her from the other side, when would it revert to the last point she was an official Jedi? Maybe not. But if that's
a good point. Like, I don't know anything specifically.
That, then I feel like they could have used her as a voice. If they used her as a voiceover in The Rise of Skywalker from Beyond, why could they have not done it as a flashback? So I don't know. I think Filoni,
who I think would have a really good point on this? Sam Witwer.
Boy,
he is so Force deep. Because I haven't come across anything in the novels specifically about that. I'm sure if I tried hard enough, there's probably some stuff out there, but a lot of stuff when it comes to like the Force itself is more what like people call head canon, type of stuff, as opposed to like actual canon. And like, unless it comes from George's mouth, or at this point like Dave Filoni's mouth or something like that, because there's still so much we don't know about the Force, and probably never will. They don't want to explain everything. You know what I mean?
I joked with you about meeting him this weekend. That's like, if you just go up to his table and say the Force, it's a 15-minute conversation.
That's why I said it. Yeah, that's why I was like,
passionate about it. Yeah,
that's exactly what I was like. Yeah, he'd probably have a really good concept on this whole point, like especially with the Force ghost type side of things. So yeah. So what was your favorite thing? I know you mentioned a little bit, but if you had to pick one specific thing, what was your favorite thing of episode 5?
That's a hard one.
Just because I want to end yours on a little bit of a positive note.
There's a lot of positivity to be said about that, and that's the problem, is I can't pick just one. It was like the whole thing.
Or was there like one moment or one scene that like just like overfilled you, if you will, with like emotion or anything like that?
Man, it kind of reverts back to a little bit of episode 4, whenever you hear him at the very end of it just go, "Hey, Snips," and it's like,
oh my gosh, yes.
you know what's happening. It's happening. It's finally happening. Type of thing. That I think was probably that moment was the best of the whole series for me, just because it was like that suspense. It's like, dude, I gotta wait another week for this now. Why? So, but
Damn
as
you,
for
Disney Plus.
Seriously, go back to movies already. I'm saying. But no, back to episode 5's credit, I would say probably the overall interaction between the two. You had that point where it was like her guard went completely shot into the ground, where it was just like, you know, you could tell, and credit to Rosario Dawson's acting skills for this. You saw every emotion that she ever experienced with Anakin in about 10-15 minutes of this episode, where it was just like the love for her former master, the appreciation for the skills that he taught her, and you also see her rebellious side, and you know, when they're having the duels and stuff, you know, basically when he's telling her about how you know, I haven't taught you everything. It's like it's straight Clone Wars, man. Like, you know, it it was all so beautifully well done, but you also see her fear for him, like you saw in Rebels, where she had that realization that he was Vader, and it was just shock, it was pain, it was pure terror. And what more can you say about Vader? That's Vader in a nutshell. So you get the both, you get the good and you get the bad. And the way that they tied that into this character of Anakin, and I call it this character of Anakin because I don't feel like it is exactly Anakin. This is some projection, or it's a Force ghost. Maybe it is actual Anakin, but the good and the bad that he's pulling from in the Force. You see that to where it is both of him. He is Vader, he is Anakin, and it is beautifully well done. So I guess if I had to sum it all up, that's my favorite point, was seeing both both adaptations of who Anakin Skywalker is, good and bad.
It's a really good insight there. Ashlyn, your thoughts on episode 5?
You know, going back and rewatching it, because we heard Dave Filoni be like, "It's a religious experience." Is this exact terminology?
You know, when I think he said
Fair
that,
point.
I don't think there's some people that are going to treat it like this, but I honestly think he meant it more as like from the story point. It's like for Ahsoka, this isn't a religious experience that she's having. I think they were just like, if you had to sum up the episode 5, you know, and how would you do it? And he said, it's a religious experience. Like I said, I don't think he necessarily meant that everyone who watches this is going to have a religious experience, but some people probably did. But anyway, you were saying.
So it's like hearing that before seeing it the first time, I was like, okay, Dave, now you've got my expectations like up here.
Yeah.
And it delivered. It did. But honestly, going back and watching it the second time, it like re-delivered it, solidified everything even more, because we went back and watched 5 before we watched 6. So we rewatched 5 and it was so good. 110% agree with Brandon as far as like the best part of the episode was the duality of seeing both of his sides being shown and their interaction with that. Seeing the red saber show up was so good. Like all of this playing out in the world between worlds and everything like that. And it was just, and I agree with Brandon on the fact that like, I'm not, you know, we're still not sure what iteration of Anakin this is, how he's being like, whether it is him, a Force ghost, a projection, whatever's going on, and whoever she's interacting with in the world between worlds. Like 100% agree with all those points. I will say my favorite like surprise moments were the whole when he calls her Snips. I almost cried. It was just like so good. And then seeing Rex. I never thought we would ever see Rex in live action. So seeing Rex was just like him and Ahsoka are like my favorite interactions. So I'm hoping he pops up again, further down in the series as like old man Rex, like we get to see in Rebels. So
yeah, and there's just so much, like you said, y'all pretty much covered it. There's just so much amazing stuff within this episode. Like Brandon said, as a Clone Wars fan, a Rebels fan, what's not to love with this episode? I know Star Wars fans are, to put it nicely, divisive.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And I know that there are people that will find things to complain about, and not even like the nitpicky stuff like we were joking about with Brandon, more just like they'll just be like, no, I didn't like it, just to say that they didn't. Well, I don't care. Like, I just really don't. Like, I don't have any other way to say it, because yes, I mentioned like maybe some nitpicky things I had problems with the whole young Ahsoka thing, but the overall story that they were telling, the way that they were telling it was great. Man, just seeing Anakin, that was the biggest shock for me, was seeing Anakin in his armor. And he even had like the hair, essentially, like the same hair, which that one got me. As soon as I saw it, I was like, wait, what? I was like they even got the hair right? That's crazy. And it's oh man, it's so good. Everyone keeps talking about those shots where it flips back and forth between him and Vader is just like some of the best like cinema that Star Wars has done recently. And it's funny because, like, in a general sense, like, that's, I don't want to say it's an easy edit, but it's, it's not like anything ridiculous. And it's just something as simple as that, just flashing, Vader for a second is enough to make everyone go, holy shit. Like, just because when Ashlyn saw it, she was like, that was really cool. Like, seeing Vader pop up for 2 seconds. And yeah, there's a lot. That's one of the kind of, we were talking about with the whole, like, the Force and, the mystical side of Star Wars. That's like a lot left to be seen. We're probably never going to get completely explained what happened in this situation, how it came to be, which version of Anakin is this, who is it, that sort of thing. Because as we've seen, especially I'd say more so in Rebels, there's a lot of stuff within Rebels like that has to deal with the Force that we just don't understand.
Yeah.
You have everything that happened on Lothal with like the wolves and Kanan and that whole situation. And even more so, if you could go back to the Clone Wars, if you go to what was originally the last season, like before they got canceled, that story arc with Yoda, seeking out answers about the Force, and he meets, like, essentially it's like the Fates, if you will. Brandon, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah, when he seeks that out, and you get some deep dive stuff into the Force and like how they want him to learn to be able to project his existence beyond the physical form, and once he dies and stuff like that. And we're kind of left with these little things here and there of like, oh, we can explain a little bit of this, but we're never going to probably get the full scope of everything. So there's a lot of questions left unanswered, but I'm honestly, I'm okay with that. I personally, I don't think this is the last time we'll see Anakin in the series. I do think he will pop up again.
I hope not. Give me
and
all.
Yeah, everyone's like, give us an Anakin series. And it's like, well, that's kind of
Clone Wars.
I was like, that's kind of Clone Wars, and or just like the original trilogy, if you will. Like, that's evil Anakin's story right there. But I wouldn't be against it, honestly. If they wanted to do a Vader series, like there's Ashlyn knows there's a really amazing comic series that tells the days, like, literally right after he becomes Vader, and like him going deeper into the Sith, like when he gets his red saber, and like how he gets it, and building Vader's castle, and the journey that he takes to become that, and the Force projections have to do with it as well. And it's a beautiful story. And I say beautiful because it's tragic, and it's like gut-wrenching and dark, and it's just everything that Star Wars should be at times. And I think that would translate really well into a series, but I just don't know if they'll ever do it. But let's go ahead. We're going to talk a little bit. We talked about episode 5. We're going to talk episode 6. So another Return of the King, if you will. We have the live action first appearance of Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now, there is a lot to say about that in particular. I'm going to jump into Ashlyn first this time for episode 6 as a whole. You don't have to just talk about Thrawn, but just the episode in general. What are your thoughts?
It was really cool, of course, since you brought Thrawn's picture up and everything, you know. We'll start with Thrawn, you know?
Like he's right there. So
he's right there. I thought it was so cool to see him come into live action and everything. This is what we've been building up to for 6 episodes now. So we finally get
crazy how long it took.
I know. But it just, and then seeing the Chimera, I remember how much you freaked out when the Chimera comes across the screen. And
oh my God, I literally I was screaming like a little girl, and I was just like, oh my God. It was like...
So that was really cool seeing the ship and the detail that they put into it. Like I remember Andrew mentioning seeing the fact that it is torn up and the battle scars on it and everything from making the jump to this other galaxy and everything like that. And then I think the thing that surprised us the most in the Thrawn story was the stormtroopers or whatever they're called at this point. You know, the clone troopers, I guess they would be. And he's just like, are they clones? Are they droids? Like, what's going on here? And they've all got the Thrawn, the red paint on them, I guess, throwing, I don't know if they were chiss symbols or what was on their armor, but they're basically Thrawn's army at this point. They're all loyal to him. It reminded me very much of the Clone Wars when Maul's Mandalorians. So it very much kind of threw back to kind of that when Maul took over Mandalore is very similar with these, because I guess they're like, well, there ain't no competition. We're all trapped in this other galaxy together. So this is our leader.
I'll say this. I don't know. I don't think they wouldn't be clone troopers. I can tell you that. Because the Empire would have phased the clones out by the time Grand Admiral Thrawn was facing off at Lothal.
So they're stormtroopers.
So I don't think they're stormtroopers either. I think all those people are dead. I think this plays into the I don't know what they are, but I don't think they some of them could be. But I think this is going to play into the whole mystical magic side of things. I think there's something that were created by the Night Sisters, because you see his right-hand man, if you will, the one with the gold face.
Yeah.
I have this inkling that they might all kind of look like that or something similar. Or they might just be hollow shells, kind of like I forget the character's name, but the one that died when Ahsoka killed him, that sprayed out all that green Night Sister mist and stuff like that. You know, they're not fully fleshed out humans. They're maybe they could have been stormtroopers and now they're resurrected by the Night Sister magic or something like that. So that's why I think that I don't think they're necessarily just humans like stormtroopers. I think there's something else at play there, and I have a feeling it has to do with the magic side of what's going on. But anyways, you were saying.
Remind me real quick. At the end of Rebels, when the Chimera went obviously to that other galaxy. Okay. But you think about it, stormtroopers would have been on board that thing, right?
Yes. Yeah. I just kind of assumed that they all died or have died at this point because it's been such a long time, and I could be completely wrong. Yeah. Like I said, there could be a number of them that are alive, but with everything that happened, that ship was tore the fuck up. Pardon my language. Most of them wouldn't have made it. You know what I mean?
To the credit of it being possibly still the same people that were on that ship when it took off. You look at their armor too, and it's beaten up. Looks like it hasn't had a lot of care because it can't have a lot of care, and there's no resources to repair the Chimera. There's no resources to repair the armor. So these guys, I mean, good Lord, it must stank in those armors.
It sure looks like it. That's for
how
sure.
many years? Not 6 years, but you know what I'm saying. Like
Yeah.
It's been a long time, and it kind of, at least to me, that was a point I was going to touch on. Was it looked like they did a really good job. It shows the age that they've been out there on their own. I'd like to know what they're all doing out there. If it is the same stormtroopers, like,
and you know, I could be completely wrong. I could be
I
completely wrong on the situation. It's just they're just setting up so many things with like the Night Sisters that my head went in a completely different direction.
No,
but you're right.
Very valid. It's a very valid point. So.
I mean, obviously they've been doing something, because you know they come up, you know, and they're just full, like, just like they left. They're in their lines and their ranks, like, so obviously. And let's be honest, Thrawn isn't going to let them just sit around by a campfire and shoot the shit for like however long they've been out there. Like, he's going to make them stay sharp and on their drills and everything. So they're definitely, like, seems to be that he's keeping everything the way it was before they got shipped off and through space and everything. So definitely seems like they're still keeping all of their roots as far as how the Empire was and everything like that. Definitely was shocked and not shocked to that we got to see Ezra, because we were just like, if we don't see Ezra, we're gonna throw a fit. Like,
let's do this. I apologize to interrupt. There's a lot to unpack with this episode, kind of like the last one, but in my opinion, almost more, because we have so many like introductions of characters with this one. What I want to do is I want to jump over to Brandon, hear his thoughts on Thrawn, since we kind of went down yours, and we'll kind of work our way to Ezra. That one. Do Ezra in just a minute. So apologies.
No, you're good.
What I would say is just like, let's. I want to hear your thoughts on the whole Thrawn situation. You know, the Chimera, the Night Sister, that sort of thing. Because it was like kind of two separate stories almost that played out like. Because by the time we got to the end, there was something completely else going on. So
you're absolutely right. With regard to Thrawn, and feeding back into that trooper discussion a second ago, I felt like they're treating him as if he is the Emperor, or as if he's a god almost.
Very much.
When you first notice he's coming, you hear Thrawn, 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 and that could just been musical ambience in the background to build it up for the viewer. But I'm thinking to myself, these guys are actually chanting, like they're proud of this dude, like this is their leader, this is their god in a sense, like their emperor. You know, it goes to show that like those guys that are out there, if they're a projection from Night Sisters, whatever have you, they're fully devoted to him. And that is, I mean, if you were in the Star Wars universe, that's terrifying. Yeah. And it's like they're live or die by this guy. If after how many years they've been out there, they're still, I would have been like, all right, bro, I need to, you know, I'm doing my own thing. I'm gonna go build a tent somewhere, you know, hang out with those little rock creatures, whatever. Like, that's gonna be me. But you know, they're fully devoted to him. They're fully devoted to his cause. And that's the type of effect that he has, which makes him such a freaking fantastic villain.
Absolutely.
As for Thrawn in itself, it was like he just got ripped right out of Rebels. They've done a fantastic job with him. I mean, it goes to show you with, you know, go to Anakin, go to Ahsoka in general. The characters that they're bringing in for the live action are doing a fantastic job. And Thrawn himself, like the moment he comes up to the Night Sisters, I don't remember what he said, but I'm thinking to myself, dude, I want that quote on a pop. Like that is just, it was just like never left. Calm. Yeah. He's calm. He's terrifying. He's focused, and it's like it all in one. That's three main elements of Thrawn, and they nailed it right off the bat. Off the first thing he says, it's just like he's still the same old
menacing
asshole.
I said from the get when we heard that, like when Ahsoka said the name Thrawn in live action, and we knew this was coming. I said from that point, I was like, they have to get the same person back. They have to. And it works because time-wise, age-wise, it all tracks. It's fine. You don't have to worry about that. And he's a pretty, like, slim dude, generally speaking. So it's not like you have to worry about him fitting the look
Which Mikkelsen is this, by the way? I know there's brothers.
This is Lars Mikkelsen.
Lars.
Okay.
Lars Mikkelsen. Yeah. Like obviously he's, especially when you're talking the animated thing, like you're never going to be the exact proportions and stuff like that. Because I saw people being like side by side, like,
man,
there was one so shitty one that was like pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, because he was like a little bit bigger up top, and I was like, "Fuck you!" I'm just like, first of all, like these are animation proportions, and like they're really focusing on the fact that he's like super fit and also like not human, things like that. So it's not going to be 100%, but I think they did a really good job with it. And like you said, him showing up, and I was just like on the inside, especially with the whole Thrawn thing going on. I was just like, this is what I've been waiting for. Yeah. This is the character I've been waiting for to come to live action, because he is, and I've talked about it many times before, he is, in my opinion, a bigger threat than some of the Sith we've come across over the course of the history of Star Wars. Like his intellect and his, honestly, it's just his intellect, like if nothing else, because yes, he can be vicious, but the interesting thing about Thrawn, and you don't necessarily get this with the Rebel series as much, but if you dive into the books and stuff like that, he does have a bit of humanity, probably not by the time we get to this point of Thrawn's story, because of everything that's happened. So like you see a shift in him that at first he doesn't like unnecessary loss of life and things like that, like in his early days with the Empire. And then I feel like that's kind of burned out of him by the Empire. And then he just kind of like really lets the warrior loose. And that's when, by the time we see him in Rebels, we're kind of at that point.
Yeah.
And now even more so, because now he's just like, we're going to really fuck shit up like when we get back. And so it's interesting that, but that makes him even more dangerous, is what I mean to say, is like we're at a point where he has completely unchecked power. He is the heir to the Empire. He has all these followers. He has the Night Sisters on his side working their dark magic and everything like that. He's got so much going for him that like the Night Sisters make up for the fact that he doesn't have Force powers. They can 100%. make up for that, essentially, because everyone's always like, oh, he doesn't have Force powers. Doesn't freaking matter. He's like, I'll use the analogy of like, he's like if Batman turned evil. You get like, because if you give Batman enough time, he'll figure out how to beat anyone. Hence why he can face off with Superman. Like maybe not in the live action version, but he can face off with Superman in the comics and the animated stuff and everything like that, and go toe to toe with them, because if you give him enough time to research and resources and everything like that, he will find a way to, if he doesn't beat him, he will make it a really freaking close fight. And that's how I see the intellect when it comes to Thrawn, because he studies everyone. Someone pointed this out, and I was a little like, I didn't realize it at the point when he said it, but he said the whole thing of like, I need to learn everything that I can about Ahsoka, who her master was, and everything like that. And they're like, there's no way he wouldn't know who her master was, because he knew Anakin. And this is something that, again, you don't get into the series. This is more deep dive with the books and the comics. But they say that everything is canon, but that's like an asterisk, in my opinion. There are certain things that they're not going to be able to be beholden to, if you will, that have been done with these books and these comics and stuff like that. And while he might have an idea of who Ahsoka's master is, he doesn't necessarily know, because he was one of the few people who knew who Vader truly was. But that took a while for him to get sorted out. And then just because he knew that doesn't mean he knew that Anakin had a Padawan, because by the time he met Anakin in the Clone Wars, and again, this is a book thing, Ahsoka was gone. Ahsoka had already left the Order. So that's not even like a point of conversation or anything like that. So I think this is one of those things where people need to kind of take a step back and be like, listen, you can't be holding everything that's come before when it comes, especially the ancillary parts of the universe. You also need to kind of like fill in some gaps for some people that haven't done this other stuff. Like you need to be able to explain certain things and explain like whether he would or would not know in that regard. I don't know, man. There's just I apologize. I could talk about Thrawn all day because
No, you're good.
there's so much with just that one character to unpack.
I got a question for you though.
Yeah, go for it.
Being that you are as big of a Thrawn fan as you are, and have gone through all the novels, and I know your devotion to that character. Do you feel this is building to a live action movie of Heir to the Empire?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's just short answer is yes.
I think that's the only way that they can go and make it
Yeah.
so good. Bring in Mando, Ahsoka, and the Rebels cast. Maybe finally we'll be able to see Zeb. Who knows? Hopefully.
Yeah. I think they might be saving him for the movie. I think this might be what happened. He might pop up at the end of Ahsoka, but I think they're saving him, especially for like the budget that it takes for that character for the movie. But it's not going to be. I haven't read Heir to the Empire. I wanted to wait till this was. No. So let me clarify. So Heir to the Empire and that trilogy of books is now considered legends. That was created prior to the acquisition of Lucasfilm. So every book, game, everything that existed prior to Disney's acquisition was then transferred into what they consider legends, because it was written over the course of 30 years. There's a lot of like things that don't coincide. They didn't always link up to, whether it be story wise, timeline wise, things like that. There was a lot of if, ands, or buts, and things that could be like almost considered separate universes.
Yeah.
They are taking, from what I hear, they are taking some story points from that, but the difference is Luke Skywalker was in that. Ahsoka's kind of taking his place on this. They're telling a completely different story. Yeah, I know so far.
Yeah.
They're telling a completely different story as far as the story points I know of Heir to the Empire. What I've read is the canon novels. So there's the Thrawn Ascendancy trilogy, which tells his time with the Chiss Ascendancy, which is where he's from, and rising through the ranks of that military. And then the Thrawn trilogy as is, which is him rising through the ranks of the Empire. And so those tie into what's happening here as far as his story, but not necessarily Heir to the Empire. I do think, though, that they will name the movie Heir to the Empire. I would be shocked if they don't. I think there's, even for people that aren't the biggest like deep dive Star Wars fans, they know that name, even if they don't know why they know it. They know that name if they know Star Wars at least a little bit, because she's even said it. Ahsoka said it in one of the previous episodes. So I think that's a really good title. I think that's what they should go with. I think they're reworking some stuff, because the little bit I know about it, there was this like mystical wizard type character, and I think the Night Sisters are taking that person's place, because they're trying to rework this novel that was written, I think 30 years ago, into and so I guess technically the books was more like 40. But this book was written like 30 years ago. They're trying to rework it into the existing universe and use characters and creatures, and if you will, that we know and are established within our own universe, rather than just throwing more new shit at the wall. So yeah, it's like I said, there's a lot you can talk about with this stuff. We could do a whole show just on theories and things like that, or talking about Thrawn, and maybe I'll do that one of these days. But let's go ahead. I apologize again for pausing the whole Ezra thing, but that's, like I said, a whole other thing to unpack. So Ashlyn, you were going to talk about Ezra, so I'm gonna let you jump back into that.
So definitely we get to finally see Ezra. Sabine's been hunting him down this whole time, and I know we talked about, we're like, is he actually going to be alive? Is he going to be a Force ghost? Like, is he going to be flashbacks? Like, how are we actually going to long-term see Ezra outside of the little video or whatever that she was watching in the first or second episode? So that was definitely really cool to see Ezra in live action. I didn't expect his look to kind of be the look that he had.
Space Jesus.
Space Jesus, sure. So, like, first off, looking at him, you're not really sure if it is Ezra, honestly, just because of the look that he has, like,
well, it's been so many years.
And it's been years. I mean, he left as, like, a teenager, and now he's, like, I don't know, looks like late 20s, 30-year-old, So, it's definitely interesting. I mean, we got like no time with him. So it was just like, hi, bye. So like I'll have to see how that goes, see like what his story is, where he's been as far as like on this planet, what's up with the mollusk clam creatures, like has he interacted with anybody else, or are they just like his little family camp of these mollusk alien things? So there's not much to go on with Ezra right now. I'm interested to see what they do with Ezra in episode 7 and kind of reestablishing that connection with him and Sabine and everything, and kind of see where it continues on from there as far as his relationship. I don't know, with everything, with being a Jedi, with the fact that Sabine was carrying on his legacy with the training of becoming a Jedi, and like how that's going to impact her training with Ahsoka and everything, because, you know, Ahsoka is supposed to be her master, but now you've got Ezra back, and Ezra was really strong with the Force and Rebels and everything like that, and all the stuff that he was learning from Kanan, and like, is she going to get overwhelmed having these two very strong people with the Force, like trying to be like training her at the same time? Like, I'm just interested to see that dynamic play out.
Yeah. One of the things that I saw that was funny, someone made a meme where it was like, Ezra says, "Oh, I can't wait to go home," and then it's like Sabine, and she's like, you know, just like that face. It's just like, nobody tell him. You know, it's like, and yeah, it's like you said, the look is interesting. It makes sense because he's been stranded for so long, so it's kind of like a castaway situation.
Apparently, there's no razors on this planet.
No razors in space. Not here anyway. Not in the far reaches of the galaxy, and minus the whole space Jesus thing. He looks pretty good. Like, obviously it's been years since we've seen the character. Like you said, he was a teenager when we last saw him. And so obviously we didn't get a ton of time with him. So we still have a lot of things left unanswered. We need to see how things progress story-wise. Is he still, this might be kind of a weird way, it was like, is he still connected with the Force, or is he cut off? You know what I mean? Like, I have questions.
Much gave me the same vibes as like when we find Luke, right? And he's cut himself off from the Force, and he looks all scruffy and everything. It gave me very similar takes and vibes.
Yeah. Well,
I
it's
got
also
a point on
go
that
ahead.
too.
Go ahead.
So I thought about this the other night. And maybe I said it in the last time we talked. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. But you think about Star Wars and how they describe the Force, and they talk about like even in the prequels and in the
sequels.
No, not in the sequels, I don't think, but in the originals.
Gotcha.
Talk about how the galaxy binds us together, and you know, all this and that. Galaxy. What if this galaxy doesn't have the Force?
True.
Because we haven't seen. I was trying to pay attention to that, and I didn't see. You know, obviously you don't have Sabine, but I didn't see. Remind me of his name. I can't remember his name. The Dark Jedi.
Oh, Balin.
Balin. Duh. Yeah. He didn't use the Force. Not this episode. They didn't use the Force at all. So maybe there's a chance that this galaxy does not have a Force. Could be not, but
or maybe the planet itself is kind of just cut off type of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, there's a whole number of things, but I wouldn't be surprised if after this, you know, it would be disappointing because I want to see Ezra use the Force, but
yeah,
I wouldn't be shocked if this next episode he explains, you know, there is no Force here or something along those lines. Side note also to Ezra, that's kind of funny. I texted my sister. I don't know if you guys know of the show The Chosen at all, or know anything about it. It's this biblical thing with, you know, going through, you know, and doing basically making live action Bible stories, right?
Got it.
And I texted my sister and I was like, why does Ezra look like one of the disciples from The Chosen? And she goes, that's funny. Dad said the same thing. Yeah, it was cool. But you hit on it when you said Space Jesus, because I was thinking the same thing, dude.
Yeah.
There's
this guy that no, you're good. There's this guy that I follow, John Roca. He's a movie review guy and everything like that. He he posted. I showed Ashlyn this earlier. He posted they did like an official Ahsoka poster for Ezra that they released, and he was like, it was something like Ezra died for our sins, but he is now risen. And I was like, oh my god,
that's right.
It was so good,
our boy.
And it's so good. I was so worried that Ezra wasn't going to be alive. Like when we got there, there was like that 50-50 shot that is like, but I think with what Dave Filoni is doing, like he wants his characters to come to live action. He didn't want to just be like, oh, sorry, he died, and we don't at least get to see him. Now what happens next? We don't know. Like, is he going to survive this whole situation? I hope. Now that we have him, I hope he doesn't show up just to die. Like, I know that there's some like emotionality and some story stuff that could like add to Sabine's thing, but I don't really necessarily want that for her in that regard. Like, I don't want her to be like, because I worry if you do the whole loss thing that makes her stronger with the Force, then it's like, is she tapping more into the dark side of the Force, or is she tapping into the light side of the Force? And I don't really want to go down that path. So I'm gonna be a little selfish and just be like, keep his ass alive,
I mean, I don't think she needs any more loss. Like, that girl lost her planet,
lost everything.
She lost her family. Like, she has that.
Because they kind of brushed over it, but they disclosed that she's lost everyone because the not the Siege of Mandalore, but the, what do they call it when the Empire destroyed Mandalore? I forget what they call it, but when that happened, that's when she lost her entire family. Was during that whole situation. So she has no one left. This is the closest thing she has to families, like her, him and Hera and things like that. That's all she's got. And I'm curious to see if he, like, if we get him back, let's say, like, obviously they're going to leave. Sorry. They're going to leave this planet eventually. They get back to where the Force is. Is he going to, are they both going to be like training with Ahsoka? Is this going to be like a new Jedi Order type of thing, like their own version of the Jedi Order? Not necessarily like the Luke version, but like maybe they kind of have their own like side, quest. I also heard there was something that I think it was Balin said, that there's a term that they created now from this series that discloses what a Jedi is that was schooled outside the Order. It was like Hoken Jedi, I think is what it was, or something like that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. They've never really talked about that specifically, but it's apparently the term that they're going to use now to describe a Jedi schooled outside of the Jedi Order. So, Brandon, any other thoughts on Ezra or anything else as far as this goes that we've discussed?
I'm interested to see the dynamic between the two. With Sabine primarily, whether she's going to gravitate towards more Ezra, or if she's going to gravitate more towards Ahsoka, because you have two people that are very well versed in the Jedi arts that she is going, and which is something she's wanting to gravitate towards. But who's she going to go towards? Because they both have very drastic differences. Maybe not Ahsoka the White, but I feel like they're very different and complex characters. In very vast areas. So I'm interested to see how in the world she's going to choose that dynamic, or maybe all three of them will work together for her benefit. That's what all two of them.
It's also possible with you mentioned the whole Ahsoka the White thing that maybe she doesn't want to, be that anymore. Maybe she doesn't. It's not. I don't want to say that she doesn't want a Padawan, but like she almost doesn't. You know what I mean? Like, because she doesn't want to teach to fight anymore. She doesn't. Right. She wants to go down a different path. So like maybe they do go their separate ways in that regard, or like Ahsoka's still around, but she's not teaching them because she's doing her own thing, and maybe Ezra kind of takes the mantle from there. I'm not quite sure, but it does seem like with everything they set up from episode 5 going into episode 6, and then with the Ahsoka side of things, she's clearly about to go down a completely different path, it seems like, than what she's been on.
Well, because we haven't even touched on the fact that, like, Ahsoka knows. Like, Ahsoka knows that she gave up everything to be with for this possibility of finding Ezra. So, like, everything Sabine has done up until this point is all about getting to Ezra. It doesn't matter what the cost is. Like, she's out there to get an answer, whether he was alive or dead. And now that he's alive, I think she's gonna keep running to Ezra. Like, I think her like actions have shown that she doesn't like she loves Ahsoka, but there's still that tension there. And now you've got new tension because now she basically betrayed Ahsoka and everyone because she's like she could have ended it all, but she didn't because now we're here, like we're on this planet. She chose to let the threat of Thrawn come forward for selfish reasons because she wants to find Ezra. So I think her showing that Ezra is her main goal, and I think Thrawn even talks about it when she gets to the planet and she meets Thrawn, that again, you know, that is her end goal. And then I think that's what we're going to see is her choosing Ezra over Ahsoka at this point. I
think well, I like thinking big picture with this whole thing. Like every episode I'm like, where is this going? What's it leading to? I think it would be cool to see at the very end of all of this, if there is an heir to the Empire movie where everyone's drafted in and whoever remains, meaning, you know, it's going to be brutal. People are going to die. We're probably going to see some characters we love die at the end of that. But how cool would it be? Because you got to tie it up to the sequels somehow. You know, Filoni wants to fix that mess. So how cool at the end of that would it be if you see Luke rebuilding the temple with the help of Ezra, with the help of Ahsoka, and just leave it at that? Like that's where my mind goes, and I know it's a little.
But then they all die. You know, it's just like
I mean, you know, what do you expect to happen?
Then Kylo comes through and kills them all. Like,
that's it, you know. But
that's why people were like, "No, get Grogu out of the order." Like, you know, it's like, so like, don't you dare kill Grogu.
But we know based off of that stuff with the Mandalorian that's Luke's goal is to train a new generation of Jedi.
Yeah,
I want to see at some point with the Filoni verse him. Luke, even if it's CGI, Sebastian Stan Luke or whoever played, you know what? I want to see that. I want to see him, Luke interacting, sharing stories, maybe a ghost Anakin right there helping, you know, something. I want to see some
kind of like a happy ending, even if it's only temporary.
Yeah, man. I mean, we gotta have something. Something. I think this cast of characters that we have with Rebels, it is a perfect time period to have these amazing characters in that can lead to that. And I got my full trust in Filoni. I know he's going to do the right thing, but that's just my selfish, humble hopes and dreams. So
fair enough. Well, guys, we're about to hit the 2-hour mark, which is the longest show I've ever done. So I think we're going to wrap things up here. After that, I want to thank you both so much for joining on the show today. Real quick, Brandon, where can the people find you?
Venture Authentics on Facebook and Instagram. I said in the last episode a little bit what we do, so I'm not going to go any further. But if you want to figure out what we do, if you're curious about what Authentics is, by all means, come check out the page.
Awesome. And Ashlyn, how about you?
You can find me at BookBrat90 on Instagram and on TikTok. I just posted a video yesterday for you guys, and I'm going to be posting a video of some new stuff coming up, some stuff for spooky season. We're going to have some book reviews, things like that. So if you are into anything spooky season, books, obviously behind me, there are lots and lots of books. We're going to do a walkthrough of our library as well this month. So I've got some fun stuff coming up like that.
Awesome. And of course, you can find me pretty much everywhere social media at Andrew is Losing. Also, be sure to check out our page on Instagram and TikTok at RetroactivePod. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, of course. I want to thank you all so much for joining us today, and we will see you next time.